Hey friend, welcome to episode 39 of the Yay for Business podcast. It's me, your host, Courtney Shaw, and this episode is going to be about playing to your strengths and leveraging your weaknesses. Let's get started. If there is one thing that I have been working on in the last 5 years, it is trying to improve myself, right? I became an entrepreneur because I wanted freedom, and then I got sucked into this entrepreneurship space that talks a lot about personal development and self-improvement. All things that I'm very attracted to. I love psychology. I love goal setting. I love dreaming big, all of that, right? But what I want to talk about today is the dark side of that, is the fact that it can also be really challenging psychologically and harmful psychologically to be constantly focusing on how you can fix your flaws and improve your weaknesses, which you might not realize that you're doing. And a lot of people would say they're not doing until you realize that you are, right? So I want to have a conversation more about leveraging your weaknesses than really playing to your strengths, because I think so many of us are trying to be different than how we are. We're trying to fix the places where we're broken. I tried for a long time to become a tidy person. These goals seem nice, right? I'm not like, oh my God, I'm broken and I need to fix myself. But it was like, oh, I'm messy and I would like to be tidy, right? Like these are goals people talk about all the time. You might not even realize that this is happening because it's just touted as personal development, as growth, as all of that. And so the other side of that is like, these are often things where we just assume that other people are good at these things or do these things and everything comes easily to everyone else. And yet for us, it's more challenging. And I think we really overfocus on where we perceive lack in ourselves instead of what we excel at, because we also assume that the things we're good at that come easily to everyone else. We think those things are obvious. We think those things are common sense. So what I believe is that every superpower, and I love the word superpower or genius. Some people don't like those terms, but I'm going to use them liberally because I love them. So every type of genius, every superpower also comes with its own form of kryptonite. I love this analogy of Superman because this has worked really well when I'm talking to people, especially with ADHD, about stop focusing so much on your flaws or your issues or your weaknesses, right? In my Rebel Productivity group on Facebook, we would have people asking a lot about like tips for procrastination, tips for working on this weakness, tips for working on that weakness. And what I started to realize is there are no tips for fixing it. There's only understanding that you're not alone in struggling with it and like hiring help or accepting that it's just not going to be the thing that you're great at. Superman didn't focus on how he was so weak to kryptonite, right? He wasn't just like sitting there obsessed about, oh my God, like I need to get better at not like being so weak around kryptonite. And my lack of knowledge about Superman is about to come through. Superman focused on saving the world and using his superpowers to do so. And yeah, every once in a while, kryptonite would be used to bring him down, but he didn't sit there focusing on, oh my God, how can I, like, these other people aren't affected by kryptonite. Why am I, right? Like, I need to stop being affected by it. Instead, he needed to focus on what his strengths were and maybe find ways to, get around the whole kryptonite thing. But it wasn't like this central focus of like, I'm such a procrastinator. I need to learn how to stop procrastinating. No, you're really good at this other thing. Just focus on that. Maybe procrastinating is a benefit to you. For me, procrastinating is when I am resisting something because I'm not lit up by it. I'm not excited about it. So that's something for me to investigate. So what are your superpowers? Your perceived weaknesses are a sign of your superpowers, because I believe that weaknesses are just the shadow side of superpowers. They're an indicator, right? The kryptonite is just like the balance. of if you're going to be that powerful, you're also going to have a weakness, right? Like that's just how it is. Maybe you berate yourself for being too rigid and inflexible. Well, you're probably a great planner and organizer. Maybe you think you're too loud and too much and too extroverted, and people are constantly telling you you're not a good listener and you interrupt them too much. Well, you probably have ADHD. This is me, but you're also probably charismatic AF and can hold the attention of a crowd and are a great public speaker and probably think really well on your feet like great comedians do. Maybe you think you're too messy. Well, you're probably a really creative and innovative thinker. You probably have this like brain that's synthesizing a lot of ideas because your brain isn't focused on linear just task management. It's hopping around a lot more. So that so-called weakness of being messy is actually a sign of your creativity. Think about, the typical professor's office, right? Maybe you struggle with follow through. Well, you're probably a great quick start, right? And vice versa. Maybe you really struggle with getting started, but you're really great at executing, but you're not the ideas person, right? So the sign that, hey, I'm not great at getting started with things. I don't have the enthusiasm. I overthink. I want to plan, all of that. Well, then you're a great planner. The people who are great quick starts like me really struggle with execution and follow through. I'm not focused on getting better at follow through. I'm hiring people to help me with that and to ping me and to make sure I do my part, right? And get things done and nag me. But I am the quick start. I am the fuel that gets us started. Do you feel like you're too unorganized? That might be another sign of high creativity and out of the box thinking, literally out of the box thinking. Everything is out of the box. You procrastinate, quote unquote, too much. Well, you probably also really hyper-focus when you get really into something. And the reason you're procrastinating is you're not able to access that hyper-focus on something because you're just not interested in it. Okay? These are all traits. You don't get to have all the good traits. The superpowers you have come with their shadow sides. So let's work with other people who have our complementary strengths, and we can understand each other and work together to fill in all the gaps, right? So for me, my so-called weaknesses are, I am loud, I procrastinate, I'm messy, and I'm forgetful. And I've decided that I'm just not focused on fixing those things anymore. I'm done. This is so freeing. Now you might say, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, but like, if I don't stop procrastinating, then I'm not going to, get my client work done. Okay, well, maybe what needs to happen is you need to create a system for getting the client work done, and you need to streamline your services in a way that makes it a lot easier for you to do so that you can hire someone to help you with some of the pieces. And this is what we teach our clients to do inside of Yay for 100K, by the way. Being messy. Guess what I do? And I have to give a shout out to my friend Karen Ward, because she's the one that finally convinced me to do this. I kept being told for years, get a house cleaner, get a house cleaner. And I was like, oh yeah, I know. But like, really, it's just like, I have trouble picking up. Like I leave things laying around. A housekeeper isn't going to do that. And what Karen said is no, but what's going to happen is that the hour before the house cleaner comes, you're going to run around picking up everything for the house cleaner. And that's what's going to keep your house clean. When you invite guests over, that's what forces you to get your house clean. And instead of being mad about that, use it, leverage that weakness and use it to your advantage. Hire help. So we've had a house cleaner for the last three and a half years, and it's been absolutely amazing. And I would never go back. I love that I don't have to deal with changing my duvet cover anymore, because that is like such a blessing to not have to do, especially with ADHD. That's like an ADHD nightmare, is like the tedium of changing a duvet cover. But B, it gets me to put my stuff away because I do leave things sitting out and I am messy, right? And that's good. Being messy is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a neutral quality. We need to stop classifying human qualities as good or bad. This is a huge, huge, huge problem that we have. And we don't get to have all the qualities. We are who we are, and we need to embrace the way that we were made, right? The things that we're naturally great at. So for me, like again, with the messiness thing, I found that there was a direct trade-off between me trying to be tidy and my creativity suffering. I was trying to fix my weaknesses, but in trying to fix my weaknesses, I was hurting my strengths. So what I mean by that is like, ask myself, like, how do my messes happen? Okay. Well, here's what I realized is that I will make lunch, and while I'm eating lunch, my brain goes into something else. It goes into like, oh, I have this idea for that thing, or like now I'm watching this TV show, or like whatever it is, right? And then I will just leave all the accoutrements from making my lunch out in the kitchen. It will just be a disaster, right? And then I would be like, oh, I need to get myself to like pick up after my lunch and like wash my dishes and all of that. But here's what I found is if I did that, if I actually picked up after myself as I went, I lost all of those idea threads. I would lose the train of thought I had that was like, ooh, I want to do a Facebook Live about this, or ooh, I really wanted to Google that, or whatever it was. And so if I interrupted that impulse, it was super fatiguing for me. Like it was so hard because it's not natural. And B, it was hurting my creativity. Now, if you're not sure, you're like, I don't really know exactly how I fit in here, or I just don't have that level of self-awareness about all of my strengths and weaknesses. What I did is I just was obsessed with personality profiles. So different types of personality tests and systems can be a great way to get insight as to what makes you unique and what makes other people unique, and really embrace the mosaic that is all of our diverse individuality as people. So the first one I fell in love with was definitely Myers-Briggs, proud ENFP over here. So lots of enthusiasm. I will be your best cheerleader. I get excited and I'm spontaneous. The life of the party, follow through is a struggle. Organization is a struggle. The Enneagram, this was the biggest one for me. I clicked so much with being an Enneagram 7 that it actually led me to learning about my ADHD, because I think when I was reading the description of ADHD and the description of Enneagram 7, I was like, wait, these say the same thing. So I think it's very common for those with ADHD or those who are Enneagram 7s to have ADHD as well. That's my little armchair opinion. The Colby Index is another great one that is so cool because you'll have there's these 4 categories, and you do have to pay for the Colby Index. It is not a free one, but what it will give you is a number level on each of those. And it doesn't mean if you're a number 1 that you're bad at it and you're number 10, you're good at it. It just means like that number indicates a different way that you do that thing. So it's not about being good or bad or off or on. We want to get out of that binary thinking, like I just talked about in a recent podcast episode, but can show me like, oh yeah, like I hate details in research. And if people come to me and they're explaining something to me with a bunch of detail, I'm like, cut to the chase. What is it? Because you'll lose me so fast. And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's because my brain can't handle the detail. I need things to be very simple and big picture, broad strokes. Human design is another one. My friend Bria is really who got me into this. And I've shared a lot of her stuff on Instagram. Her Instagram handle is @soulrush.co, I believe. Really check her out. But that's been a really cool one to lean into, as well as learning how I'm designed, which is a little bit less of a personality profile. It's much more of a chakra and astrology based system. I found it to be surprisingly helpful. I was very skeptical, and now I'm like, you know what? This has been one of the more helpful things that I've ever done. So ultimately, this is a quick episode, but I just want you to walk away with this ultimate message that you need to stop focusing on fixing your weaknesses. Like, what if, instead of me saying you need to, because I feel like that's like a command and that's very strong, and you might be like, well, who are you to tell me what I need to do? No one. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm going to encourage you to consider, what if you did an experiment where just for a month, a week, a day, whatever it is for you, what if you just stopped trying to fix your weaknesses and you let them be? Whatever those things are. You could pick one thing. Procrastinating, messiness is an easy one because it's very visual and tactile, scheduling, organization, whatever it is, and just stop trying to be better at that. And instead, what if you looked at what's the opposite of that? What that kryptonite is a symbol of what superpower that I have. And what if for that period of time, you focused on just doing more of that strength. For me, this has changed my life. For me, this has meant right now what I'm doing is literally an example of this is I'm in this podcast studio recording this podcast episode that I paid to be in the studio because it works for me. It works for me to do it this way. And I could sit there and go, oh, well, I could have saved that money. And why couldn't I just record this at home and whatever? Because I couldn't, because I didn't want to, because it doesn't work for me. That's good enough, right? So what if just experiment with that? And I will leave you with that. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I will chat with you next week. Yay! Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you love today's content and are ready to finally start making a full-time income from your business this year, make sure to get on the wait list for my program, Yay for Clients, over at yayforclients.com, and you'll be notified the next time enrollment is open. Or if you're already booked with clients and you want to learn how you can turn your signature service into a signature program and add 100K of revenue to your bottom line, come apply to my group coaching program, Yay for 100K, over at CourtneyShaw.com/apply. Thanks again and have an awesome day.